Your source for all things Texas Tech. This is the Ask Level podcast from Double T 97.3.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome into another episode of the Ask Level podcast with Chris Level. I'm Chois Woodman. This podcast, as usual, brought to you by our friends at Cantex Roofing and Construction.
I'm Mike Hebert, owner of Cantex Roofing and Construction. Every day is game day, and we'll get it right when it comes to your roofing, construction, windows, and mirrors. Call Cantex Roofing and Construction today. Together, we are one serving you.
Level 3-0. First 3-0 start for the Red Raiders since 2021. You've had some slip-ups in recent years, but not this time around, and we'll get into it, but maybe starting with the toughest, or one of the toughest for sure, opponents in the Big 12. So we'll preview Utah, but before we do that, let's look back to what we saw in the toughest test to date for the Red Raiders. What was your biggest takeaways from the win over Oregon State?
Yeah, you're Joey's now 18-5 at home.
Mhm.
And you're 3-0, you're supposed to be.
Yeah,
I don't think there's any, but again, as Joey often says, I think he was taught this very early in his coaching career, you celebrate all wins. You didn't have a tricky game like going to Raleigh, going to Laramie,
hmm
going to Pullman this year. And next year you'll make the return trip to Corvallis. But yeah, you're 3-0 and you've done what you were supposed to. I guess and you and I we were sitting up in the booth during the delay because it was a phenomenal atmosphere to start. I mean, the
yeah,
flyover and the place was just packed, and it was just very frustrating to, I'm sure, many people, and totally out of your control. That, like, what, 2 minutes and change in, it's like, hey, time out, everybody go back to where you came from. And it's just like, then you wonder, because that's advantage road team. Um, because not everybody came back. I mean, I don't know what you would estimate what the crowd was like. There was maybe more that came back than I would have thought, but what was it, 2 hour and
I think 2:24 was our official
okay, I was
time
gonna
on
say
that.
2:15, but yeah, 2 hours and 24 minutes. Yeah, just sitting there and wait, man. And then, like, okay, had another lightning strike, and so you don't know, because Oregon State had two false start penalties. They were clearly not on the same page. They were rattled. They'd
Sure.
had six the week before. And you were starting to drive, and then it's just like, hey, timeout. So your concern is how you're going to react to that. And I thought, I mean, 45-0 later, I thought you handled it great.
Yeah.
They had some first team against your second and third team defense touchdowns at the very end of the game, and then I just, it's funny because this is just shows you how kind of spoiled we are. Barron threw for more yards in that game than anybody has in the country yet this year, 464. And yet, you kind of want to look at, okay, what about the one interception?
Right.
Or did he miss some? He got sacked a few times. But I mean, if he's going to throw it for 464, and you saw
Yeah.
the playmaking, and I also think you saw them go down the field quite a bit as
Sure.
well. But yeah, that was honestly my biggest takeaway, is like, because we noted this on the broadcast. I think Coach Leftwich felt like that your running backs and your tight ends would have an advantage in this game against the matchup of their safeties and linebackers, and he was right. Yeah,
Yeah.
he was right, especially because Terrence Carter and Jacoby Williams were both over 100 yards receiving. Or excuse me, both over. Well, no, I think I'm
Yeah.
right there.
You're
Yeah,
correct.
that's
You're
right.
correct.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Jacoby had like 100 and I'll have to pull it up, but I mean, all-purpose yards. His
like
were
close
way
to
up there.
200 or
Yeah,
something. Yeah, yeah. But it was, I mean, of Barron's, like, say, 464 yards passing, I think is what the stats are a little fuzzy for a variety of reasons, just because they've been changed like two or three times since
yeah,
beginning, during, after have been changed quite a bit. Um, but I think like you had 250 plus yards of after the catch,
It's pretty good.
which was this is a category you sh have struggled in mightily over the years. Just you know,
Yeah.
like the last several years, you just like were able to just not enough speed on the field, and you throw it, and it's a catch, and then that's where it stops. I mean, there was just no plays being made, but I mean, Caleb Douglas, Terrence Carter, Jacoby Williams, Reggie Virgil last week. I mean, that's been fun to watch some of that, and then they're going to be tested more than they've been tested at all, but. Your first team defense played into the second half for the first time this season, and they just, they forced a field goal attempt. It was missed, but just really impressive group. And I thought Cole Wisniewski showed up quite a bit in this game, more so than we've mentioned him. And you kind of start to see what kind of player he can be for you because he just didn't have any opportunities in
Sure.
the first two. So, but. Yeah, those are my takeaways. I mean, we can get into the weeds if we want, but that's kind of generally speaking.
You did mention the name Terrence Carter. Is there a injury update there or other guys that were injured? Someone did ask a general injury question there.
I don't know the update there, but I don't think there's going to be any issue with Terrence.
Okay.
I would be more concerned about Duda Banks.
Mm.
And then there's always the ones that happen after the game, or they think they maybe saw something and it's a lot worse. I mean, you just don't know. That
Right.
kind of pop up after the game or even the day after or whatever that was. But because when Howard Sampson left and went to the locker room, little puckered up there. But he came back and played in the third quarter. So I think that was Oliver Miles.
Mm.
Who else am I missing here? I think that's it. Yeah, TC. I mean, it's a shoulder issue. I think Coach McGuire talked about that's an AC joint, and so, but that's what Barron had all last year. You just play through it. It's not fun, but you just play through it. Unless it's like I forget if it's like grade one is the worst or grade three or four is the worst or however they do that. I don't know which one, but I took this one as like somewhere in the middle to not as bad,
Isn't that what
on
Terrence
the
Bullitt
scale.
had forever, where he kept dealing with
Well,
that? His was really
his
bad.
kept popping out. His
Okay,
shoulder
his.
kept popping out.
Okay.
Yeah, like they couldn't keep. He played with a big old harness, and they
Yeah, I
just
remember
couldn't
that.
keep his shoulder intact. So that's
There's a,
the problem there.
there's a blast from the past.
I
Um,
know. Yeah, T-Bull.
so,
Yeah, no,
uh,
it is fun because I saw this is always fun for me. I've been
oh
doing this
yeah.
for a while now, but I saw Dylan Cantrell
Okay.
was on the sideline with me. Talked to Jakeem, was on the sideline for a bit, and then saw Pete Robertson, who was on the sideline. I mean, all just really good players here and from kind of similar but different eras, years gone by. But yeah, it's fun to see those guys. I saw Mason Tharp,
Okay.
who come back, who just recently had just left for last year, and you know, anyway, so that's fun for me to. I think deep snapper Jacob Monk was also with Mason, so he was from a few years ago. So anyway, but yeah, good stuff.
Big recruiting weekend on campus. You had a lot.
Oh
I
yeah,
do think it was. I am glad for the recruiting purposes that you were able to get those first few snaps in, so you could see, so those recruits could see what you can be, at least,
yeah.
and that level of atmosphere. Because if you didn't get that, you probably would have had a much lesser crowd feel to it. But um, what's obviously you get one commit over the weekend, and you had some pretty other pretty big names on campus this weekend, right?
Yeah, because you don't have much room left in your current class. A lot of the big time guys that are coming in here right now are, 27s and 28s, which is crazy that we're
Yeah,
like, God dang. The years just keep flying by, man.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, Bryce Gilmore from Prosper, big time offensive tackle type player. You had led throughout most of this process, and then just weirdly, he committed to Arkansas out of the blue, back several months ago, I guess it was. And then last week, he just like he decommitted from Arkansas and he set up a visit to Texas Tech, like all with us in a span of 2 or 3 hours. And the I will movement continues. I'll just say that he's a big time player because Ellis Davis, Connor Carty, and now Bryce Gilmore all have come from that particular school, and so that's I've had people joking like who's the best offensive lineman they've got for next year. I mean, because this is like what three years in a row, I guess,
Yeah,
which is crazy that one high school has
sure.
that many big time Division One offensive linemen because like Carty was very highly ranked a year ago. And then whatever happened, he was committed to A&M for a long time. And right before signing day, either he said, "Man, I don't want to do this," or A&M ran out of room and they were like, "Hey man, we don't have a spot for you." I don't know. But however that happened, um, it was Texas Tech's gain because he's been really good as a true freshman to this point. I think he's really like impressed, and I think they feel like they hit on him big time. And then this, I think that he, in so many ways, kind of helped out with Gilmore as well. So yeah, there's your recruiting stuff, and obviously Kavion Bryant, the 2027 number one quarterback in the country was here. And it's weird because I get the sense that the fans, in some ways, this is kind of like become ho hum a little bit, and it's just not.
It's crazy, isn't it?
I
Like
mean,
how
when I was
quickly we
doing
get
this,
spoiled.
oh yeah, when I was doing this in the mid 2000s, everybody would have stopped traffic if you just got a four-star type player to even visit,
Yeah,
much less if you had a realistic chance with them or not. Um, and now you're almost getting them to visit and expecting to land them, and it's like now you're collecting them because I think this is like the eighth or ninth player in this class that was or is a four-star or higher type player committed.
yeah,
So yeah, pretty good stuff.
yeah. I mean, it was kind of the norm for I don't know, for the last 10 years or so that you would land one 4-star, maybe two in a class, and now it we're getting used to it. It's crazy to have that feeling. And this kind of goes along those lines. Florida Raider asked the question, can we be greedy and add an elite quarterback or an elite cornerback?
In this class,
He didn't specify which class, but I guess
or maybe in the portal, or yeah, I don't know. Well, I mean, quarterback is lined up. Is that what that was the
quarterback and
quarter? Okay,
cornerback.
quarter
Yeah.
and corner. Well, quarterback is lined up for the next several years. If you add Bryant, which I think you're in pretty good shape to do, it's going to be you or Texas. I mean that's because I think you forget Lloyd Jones is a pretty big time prospect who's 6'4". You've got Will Hammond, you've got Mitch Griffiths for another year, and then you've got Stephen Cannon committed, and Cannon had a lot to do with the LaDainian Guyton commitment, and you're trying to get the running back from Savannah as well, Stanley Smart, and then potentially Bryant. So I just don't know if you're going to get into the business of needing to go get another quarterback, whether it be recruiting or whatever. Now, if you don't get Bryant, then obviously you will turn your
Right.
attention elsewhere. And then corner, I mean, you're depending on what it looks like. I mean, this is like what you brought in the portal. Teron Grant was a former five-star prospect. He's got 3 years left, or I guess he's got 2 years left after this one. Mo has still got more eligibility. Macho Stevenson, who I think is going to be a good player, he's being allowed to kind of grow up and
Yeah.
and mature
He was thrown into the fire last year.
yeah, and it wasn't really fair to him. So I think you're in pretty good shape there as well. So anyway, but and then they've added several top DBs in this particular class, most of which are safeties, but.
All right, let's move on to a few questions before we give a full preview of the Utes. This one says, Level, which newcomer has been better than you expected them to be? That one is from Boone.
Dante Balfour.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't know if I knew that he would come in and be as long and athletic and then start. And he's had a little bit of an injury issue as well, but still, I think he's been better than I think everybody maybe would have thought. And I think maybe somebody like Roy Alexander hasn't made as much of an impression as you would have hoped. I mean, I knew Carter was good. I don't know if everybody else knew it, but we talked about him all summer
sure.
long. I mean, he's a freak and such a mismatch. I think your defensive line additions, I mean, like they're all just good players. Every one of them. And and we probably haven't seen the best of like Reggie Virgil yet, although you've seen plenty of flashes,
Seen
but
some
like
good. Yeah.
like he's got more to show you, I think. And Carter, like I said, Carter, and the offensive line, it's like it's hard to judge that right now. You got Jados who's battling with a shoulder issue. Zambrano did not play on Saturday because of some food poisoning before the game, but they were trying to be intentional there about playing him at right tackle and at left guard because I think they feel like they've got six starters. Um, and so, but I mean, Jados has been good. I think Howard Sampson's been good. I think Zambrano just was so dinged up that it skewed your hopes there, but it's just the way it was. But I think he's now, if this food poisoning aside, I think that he'll, um, and maybe Upton Bellenfant hasn't been as good as we maybe would have hoped
Maybe.
to this point. But that almost is like trying to take things away from Stone Harrington, who's just, I think, close
Yeah.
to taking this job. So that's not really fair. But
And
um,
we've only seen one negative thing from Bellenfant. I mean, it's just the one
missed extra point.
missed
Yeah,
extra point.
I
Yeah.
guess I'm going off of the fact of maybe he hasn't been as good in practices, and that's why this
Right.
is a kicking competition, all that
Yeah.
stuff. But
He hasn't gone and taken the job. So,
right, right,
yeah.
right. But as far as being better than, I think Balfour is certainly one.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that one's a great answer. I mean, you have a lot to pick from, but um it kind of depends where you set your personal expectations on guys coming into the season because I think a lot of them have lived up to any hype that they could
Mhm.
have. And
But this next week is really why this thing was put together.
exactly.
That's when you'll really find out what you've been able to put together, and because there's no doubt you're good. The question becomes, are you going to be good enough? And it's not like this is a end all
Yeah.
be all this weekend, but it's a big one. There's just
It's a
no way
huge
around
one.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. And I think you create some margin for error if you win this one, whereas you really eliminate most of it if you don't get it done.
You're not wrong.
Trying to get to the conference championship game and losing the first one out of the gate would seemingly be very difficult task. It's doable. It's just you've yeah. So, but that's really what we're going to find out.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's obviously is about as big of a game as you could play out of the gates in Big 12 play. Um, Here's one that kind of leads into that. This one comes from Matt. Biggest concern for you, or excuse me, for Tech from you heading into conference play.
Can you run it when you want to? Can you run it whenever they know you're going to run it? I mean, can you be successful there? That's and is your defensive front as good as we might think it is? I
Okay.
mean, are we being fooled? Is it really legit once they get tested and get punched in the mouth a little bit? I mean, this Utah team runs it for about 300 a game, but
And
I
they've
don't
got
know
the
if they,
best offensive line. I don't think there's much argument to that in the league.
yeah, and I think one of the best in the country.
Yeah.
But a lot of the analytical stuff, a lot of the draft grades, a lot of the this and that. I think you have one of the best defensive lines in the conference and in the country. But who wins that matchup? And is that, or does it just cancel each other out? And then we start looking at, other things in this game. But that's my biggest thing is that can you run it when you want to, or are you going to be one dimensional? Um, yeah, I mean that's where I would, and I guess that is can your offensive line, how improved is that? Because I think we know defensive line is worlds better and worlds improved, and at the minimum, but again, are they good enough to compete with the best offensive line in the league or one of them in the country? Okay, but that's a different question than can your offensive line hold up on the road in a hostile environment in a big game, and um, can you run it when you want to? Like, what does it look like in short yardage and in the red zone, or is this all on Barron? But
Yeah.
Barron will need to play well this weekend as well. But that's my biggest concern, while giving you some other context there around that.
Yeah, I think this game is, I've said it before, I just wish you had it at a different time of year or a different time. Heck, flip it with the Houston game, it would feel different. Um, just hate that you get the toughest test out of the gate, especially with what you played in the non-conference, but you can't really pick and choose. I
And,
mean,
and are you saying you think this is the toughest game all year?
as it sits right now, yes, for
Yeah,
Texas Tech.
and
Who,
and I don't think that it will be. I
where do
still
you?
think I
Arizona
still
State?
think Arizona State is the best team you'll see.
Okay.
I think there's some data that backs that up.
Okay.
I think that regardless of the loss to Mississippi State, I mean, we know, and I'd be willing to listen to that. It would be the toughest test. It may end up being that, but
Hmm.
I think it's kind of 1 and 1A, I guess, with those two.
Okay.
And whereas the Kansas State game all of a sudden doesn't look as daunting. However, I'm not I'm not going to be fooled there because Kansas State has done this before, and then they just start rattling them off, and so I don't know, but I think Arizona State will also be very difficult. And you could argue that loss to Mississippi State was the best thing that could have happened to Arizona State. It doesn't cost them in the conference standings at all. They've got so much of that production back. They seemingly have replaced Scatterboo. They have one of the best. See, because this is where Utah. This is going to be a trenches, like points at a premium type of game this weekend.
Yep.
But Arizona State, they've got the Utah's biggest weapon is their quarterback, and they've got some running backs that I think can be a problem. Their scheme is a problem, but they don't. They're very average at wideout. They've got a tight end that they throw it to, but it's really the quarterback running around and making plays, and he's very good. But if they ever have to play from behind, now can you get them into that point? That's where you really wonder because see again in Texas Tech, there's so many things that could be problems. They just haven't presented themselves yet, and
Sure.
Utah haven't had to play from behind at all. So, and you may not be able to get them in that scenario as it stands. So. But I think that those are fair to say, but I just don't want to gloss over Arizona State either. I think that's going to be a problem as well.
Yeah. I mean, this is I guess the hype surrounding this game is big. Both teams are top 17, top 16 in the country. You got the big noon kickoff there. I do wonder how the 11 a.m. our time, 10 a.m. Salt Lake City time kickoff affects the game because that's obviously that's got to be a positive for the Red Raiders, right?
Well, it's definitely not a negative. I think that again, you'd be a little bit more leery of a night kickoff, you know.
Sure, sure,
Now maybe, and I'm sure both teams have some or most of their practices in the mornings. It's just the atmosphere can kind of suffer a little bit, but maybe because of the big noon kickoff,
Maybe it doesn't. Yeah.
on the show and everything, they'll be juiced up and it'll be full and all those things. But I just think places are tougher to play at nighttime typically. And again, this has nothing to do with atmosphere or reputation of some stadium or whatever. This is all about, are you good enough to go in there and win? And are they better than you? Did you add enough in the trenches to all of those things is what's going to ultimately decide this thing, in my opinion.
Back to the questions. Level, in your opinion, which is the more talented overall team, Tech or Utah? That is from Jason.
Well, Texas Tech is, I think, according to the NFL folks.
Okay.
Okay. I think that Utah is one of the, like if you're looking at, if you want to base this on like draft type stuff, I mean, it's like you've got 13 to 14 players that are on these lists and like that the folks are watching from a draft standpoint, whereas like Utah has like 6 or 7. But again, like I've said this before. Remember these games where you roll in and you beat OU or you beat Texas or whatever or A&M years ago. There's no way you were anywhere near as talented as they were, and yet you still got it
Sure.
done. And so, but this one is, um, I mean, if they can run it right at you and have some success doing that, I think you have every reason to be very concerned about as this game plays out. If you can force this kid to beat you with his arm, now granted, he threw it 40 times against Wyoming and he ran it 13, did Devin Dampier. But if you can force them to have to run it where he's got to really, really beat you with his arm, I would like your chances. And maybe he's good enough, and maybe he does beat you with his arm. I don't know, but that's I think the game you're going to try to play. But easier said than done there with that big offensive line, and it's just difficult to play a running QB as we've seen over the years. So does Shieldwood? Does he spy him? Does he? Because that's the other thing, Woodman, is you're going to get a lot more from your staff this week as far as different looks and things that
Sure.
you haven't seen yet.
Yep.
I don't know how much. I don't know exactly what that is, but they've been sitting on stuff, and Utah has as well. There will be plenty of things that Utah does or shows you that you haven't seen yet this year, too.
Yeah, I think if Vegas looks at this game, if this was as a neutral site game, it would likely be around a pick 'em based off the line of where it sits on a road contest for Tech. It opened at 4 or 3.5, where you're looking. Um, and a lot of times in those games that you look at as fairly equal, it comes down to coaching and execution. Just, I mean, the game plan itself, and if you're executing that game plan. So,
Well, and players, does
sure,
somebody,
playmakers, yeah.
yeah, does somebody make a play?
Yep.
And that's where it should give you a comforting feeling in that if you can protect Barron, it's hard to cover all these guys. And I think the what Utah typically has done, they've been really good at it. They play a lot of man coverage, and I think it's going to be very difficult to run the football, but they play a lot of man coverage, and you've got to be able to win some of those one-on-one matchups down the middle or down the field with Douglas and Virgil and Aiken and
Yep.
Carter and Miller and folks like that. And so you got to be able to play pitch and catch a little bit here because I think it will be difficult as it stands to be able to run it. But at some point, you're going to have to be able to run the ball a little bit. You're just going to have to be.
So, Level, you've given us the game plan or the outline of what Tech needs to do. What's your confidence level that you're going to be able to make Devin Dampier throw the football and be able to get a big play or two in this game to maybe get out in front?
Well, I mean, yeah, that's why we're about to play this thing. I kind of because what do we ultimately know about either team? The
Not a lot.
the
Both have
I
played.
had said a week or so ago that I thought, and boy was I wrong, happens often, that UCLA may be the best team that either one of these two teams will have played before they
Yeesh.
play. That's not true. Now it's probably either Wyoming or Oregon State.
Correct. Yeah.
But can you have some big picture thought processes based off of how one looked against? I do think Utah has got the much better resume to this point. I think they've probably proven more simply because they've done this twice on the road,
Correct.
and you've just been sitting at home, sitting in rain delays, 2 out of the 3 weeks. Um, but I mean, I'm not so sure Kent State couldn't have beaten UCLA. Yeah,
It's a bad team.
so for all the credit that Utah got from that one, and that's not Utah's fault. It's just UCLA's a mess.
They
Um,
fired their coach too.
yeah, that's right. So that's why it's hard to like sit here and tell you this is what will happen or this is what we know will happen. But it should be just a really good game, and I think points will be at a premium. I think that this is probably, so take your nitroglycerin pills, because I think that this could be one of those one possession games into the fourth quarter, and I expect this game to be a semi-limited possession type game as well.
Yeah.
Just because of the way Utah does it. You know, but all the little things are going to matter, man.
Oh, they will.
Penalties, special teams, all the stuff, because the margins are just razor thin there.
No doubt. Here's a question that's kind of funny. Is there a more annoying fan base in the Big 12 right now than Utah? I don't know if this is.
No, yeah, not at all. Not that we've encountered, and part of it is because they were very bad last year after being picked to win the league, and I think that but here's the main point: they don't want to be in this league. They had no other choice, but I think
Yeah.
that they feel they're above it, and you threw them a life preserver, and so that's what I don't guess I understand. But they would jump to the Big Ten in a heartbeat, if ever given the opportunity. But they don't really want to be in this thing, and they haven't. Their basketball program was terrible.
Hmm.
They just haven't, to this point, they haven't brought a lot to the table. Whereas I think BYU has been the best addition that you've added of either of the quartets of additions. It's not even close. That they are far and away the best addition you've added, like in totality. I think Arizona State with their football championship and their playoff deal, but like when you just look at the whole big picture, I think BYU's been the best addition, with Arizona State maybe in a close second simply because of what they did in football. But like their Arizona State's basketball program, a bit of a circus as well. And
If
I think Arizona State had some baseball success last year and all that stuff.
Yeah,
Anyway,
if you're taking the big three sports level, football, basketball, baseball, there were two teams that didn't make a postseason. Didn't make any of those postseasons. It was UCF and Utah. That was
yeah.
it out of this 16 team league. So yeah, so there was a lot of chatter for not last year, and hopefully you can quiet some of
Yeah,
that this weekend.
and the Utah fans are having fun at my expense.
Oh, I've
In
seen.
this. Yeah, and yet it's soft that they try to pull a portion of what is set out
Oh
when
yeah.
they didn't, because I think I stated, like you could go up to Utah and thump them, quote. And then as we kept going, like, or you could go up to Utah and get thumped,
Oh
but
yeah.
no, they didn't include that part. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, and again, I will say this about their fan base: at least they have a pulse,
Sure.
and they're passionate, and they're engaged. Because some of the fan bases that you've added,
Right.
like you know, it's not there's not a whole lot going on there. Like UCF before you added was like they were really like we're about to come in and run this league, and then
Hmm. Man.
they've kind of bottomed out here. Cincinnati, I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know. Um, you
I
know,
know that Arizona was one of my more disappointing experiences as far as a fan base we've gone to go to a game. They had a primetime game last year. They were coming off of a big win over Utah, and that stadium was only 75% full when they were riding pretty high when we went there last year. So Arizona wasn't. I mean, there's some of these other places in the league that don't match up with the passion level of a lot of your incumbent Big 12 teams, and that's just I think
Yeah.
Utah will be one that kind of matches that. So that'll be fun to see it, and you'll have an absolute true road test for the Red Raiders this weekend. Level, great stuff, man. We'll talk to you. We'll hear Level and Brian and John on the broadcast coming up this weekend. Get your coffee, and we've got that ready for an 11 a.m. kickoff on Double T 97.3. Level,
Kegs and
appreciate the
eggs,
time.
man.
Kegs and eggs. Love it.
That's
All right,
right.
man. Have a good week.
I get to feeling better, Woodman. Appreciate you taking care of me as always. Thank you to the folks at Cantex Roofing as well. And keep hope alive, people. We'll talk to you next time.
That's Chris Level. I'm Chois Woodman. It's been the Ask Level podcast brought to you by Double T 97.3.
You've been listening to the Ask Level podcast, powered by Double T 97.3.